Hello, I'm back. I'm Code Eric, and I've been live coding here on Twitch for maybe 4 or 5 hours now over the course of 2 days, trying to work on what I would call like a mediocre text input inside of React Native, because rich text input is a little bit too much for me to implement right now. I just need like a poor text input, like a working class, blue collar text input, something practical for making human text that you can input inside of your React Native app that will be presented in a variety of contexts. So I want to show you all of the progress that I've made here with the few people who have showed up on Twitch. I really appreciate you coming here live to enjoy this madness. And this is the input that we've created. It is a actual native React Native text input. It's not using a web view, which is how a lot of React Native text inputs work. Instead, it's using a technique where you can actually render children inside of your text input component, and those children can be other text nodes that are fully stylable here. So here, I struggled a lot the very first day because of the sort of events that come out of React Native. What I found super interesting actually was that on Android, the text input component behaves a little bit more predictably and a little bit more reliably. We can toggle the attributes. We've got italic, underline, strike through, and we can write new text. And at the end of the text input, we can type additional text and affect the new styles that are being applied. On iPhone, unfortunately, we have noticed that there's this really glaring issue where potentially the text that's showing up inside of the text input component cannot be fully controlled stylistically. So that's why we're showing this current state here where you can see exactly what the internal representation of the text input has. So I'm going to disable italic, and I'm going to disable bold, and then I will type. And here you can see that it's still bold and italic inside of the React Native text input, but the actual state, the internal state, we're just rendering the text normally down here, is not bold and italic. And that's a bug that's only happening on the iPhone text input. So I'm pretty confident that this is a bug inside of React Native, and we're going to have to dig into this. But at this point, I think we've made really good progress on making a usable text input component for making human text, basic stylable human text. I don't really want to make it so that every feature is supported under the sun, like colors and every last little font change. Like I think most of that can be handled outside of this human text editor component. But I do want to show you quickly what went into the implementation. On the first day, I struggled immensely trying to write this really painful algorithm that would understand the sort of events that are coming out of React Native. Because on the text input component, we get a few different events. We get this onText input event, and that will specify basically what text is happening in what character range, like if text is being deleted or if new text is being added, and exactly where that text is being added. We also get an event for the selection change, which specifies the selection start and the selection end. But the big innovation that we had today was a contribution. Ulrich on Twitter recommended Delta, which came with Quill.js. And Quill is a web-based text editor, and here we're basically just making a text editor for React Native. So I was a little skeptical that this library called Delta would actually be very valuable for us. But Delta is a very low level, it's a very simple system that basically helps you manage ranges of text and attributes on those ranges of text. So let me show you what we do in order to interpret these events and handle them. So when text input comes in, we're given a native event with the text and a range that's associated with it. And what we can do is we can construct a new delta, and we can apply that on top of the existing state. So the initial state looks something like this. You can specify basically the story of how a document is made, where you're inserting some text, and then you're inserting some text with attributes. And these attributes are totally up to us what kind of attributes we make. We call ours custom attributes, and it has bold, italic, strike through, and underline. Eventually, we might support some more advanced things like links, but for now, we've got custom attributes. And our initial state looks like this: hello working class, text input on React Native, where certain things are bolded and italicized. And then we have a few additional pieces of state inside of our mediocre text editor. For example, we're keeping in mind the current selection state. So when the user moves their cursor around or when they select something, we keep that selection in mind. And we're also keeping in mind what attributes are currently being applied for future text. So I'm going to demo this on Android because there's no bug over there. If we go ahead and tap strike through, we can see that it strikes through. So we're making good progress. We can see that we also have a presentation style where we can take this format of document and we can just render it as static text in React Native. And this is really powerful and useful stuff. That one is just called mediocre text, and you can see exactly how this text is being rendered. Inside of a text component, you can render other text components, and depending on the styles that are available inside of this document, there are different styles that we are applying directly to these pieces of subtext. And this approach is exactly what we're doing inside of the actual text input component itself. So here, we're inside of the text input component, and inside of the text input component, like I said, we can render as many text nodes as we want. So that's exactly how this WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, editor is working, because we are literally using the same approach that we would be for presentation. We're using it inside of the actual text editor. And thanks to Delta from Quill.js, it's actually relatively straightforward to manage those changes. So you've seen what it's like when text input changes, and I'll also show you what it's like when we apply the attributes. So we create a new delta, and what we do is we use retain, which allows us to either skip or apply some number of characters. So we skip to the beginning of the selection, and then we go for the range of the selection, we apply the attribute. And we are applying the attribute based on the opposite of what our current state is of whether or not that attribute is there. So this code has been pretty fun to write. And of course, I've posted it on GitHub and will eventually be putting it inside of the Zerve project. But right now it's available under my GitHub repo in rn mediocre text input. One of the big reasons that we discussed about a little bit on stream of why this thing needs to be brought into the main Zerve repository is because the styling and the aesthetics and the themability of this component needs to be styled with the rest of the application. So it needs to look like it's fitting in. So I think we've made really great progress as far as getting like an actual React Native text input working. I was really surprised when I realized that it works better on Android than it does on iOS as far as the actual raw text input component when you're using children text elements. And this was quite an adventure. The first day of the stream was pure pain because we didn't have Quill Delta. So the next stream we spent maybe 2.5 hours getting this to this level, and now pretty soon we'll be ready to pull it into the Zerve repo where we can start theming it like we do with the rest of the Zerve application, which that itself is a separate project that it's up in the air. Maybe we're going to be using Tamagui, which is this exciting new React Native theming and style system and design system. Or maybe we're going to be using something like Dripsy, which is also super popular in the React Native world. In any case, feel free to check out the code on GitHub. And if you're interested in this sort of thing, I stream live on Twitch every once in a while. Right now I'm on EU hours, but who knows what time I'll be streaming. Just subscribe to me on Twitch. And if you're curious about any of this stuff, feel free to hit me up on Twitter, DM me, or you can join the Zerve Discord, where we're happy to talk about all this different stuff together. So feel free to join the community. Thanks for participating, and I will see you again soon.